Hello, my name is Nelda Kirk with the Oklahoma State Election Board. We have made some adjustments to the way we are presenting training this year to protect both you and the County Election Board staff. We hope you will find this training beneficial. The training is divided into two videos, a part 1 and part 2. You should be able to turn on closed captioning if you are viewing the video from the YouTube channel and would find it helpful by pressing the CC button at the bottom of the screen. We believe that in Oklahoma, we have the best election system in the country. You are a big part of the reason. For most voters, the precinct officials are the only contact that the voter has with our election system. So in effect, you are the face of the election system. We count on you to represent the Oklahoma election system well. We cannot conduct elections without having people like you who are willing to work. Thank you so very much. The election system is like a big pie. There are many pieces of the pie, and you are an important piece of that pie. Please write your questions down as you watch the videos. After you have finished the videos, if your questions have not been answered, please contact your county election board.
Hello and welcome to the 2022 Precinct Official Training for Oklahoma Precinct Officials and Absentee Voting Board members. My name is Paul Zierix, the Secretary of the State Election Board, and I'm very happy that you have decided to serve in this important role. As election officials, we have to enforce the laws and rules of elections the way the laws and rules are written, not the way we wish they were written. That's why it's important for you to pay attention during your training and make every effort to always follow the laws and the rules. That's an important part of protecting the security and integrity of our elections. And I want to close by saying, in a representative republic like we have in the United States and in the state of Oklahoma, where our representatives are democratically elected, it is you, the precinct officials and absentee voting board members, who are on the front lines of our democracy. We cannot have elections without you. You have one of the most important jobs in the world, and we're very appreciative that you have volunteered and taken the steps to become a precinct official in the great state of Oklahoma.
Did you know that there are several things that would disqualify you from acting as a precinct official or election official? A precinct official cannot be a candidate on the ballot, an employee of a person on the ballot, related to a person on the ballot within the second degree, related to the Secretary of the County Election Board within the third degree. Take a look at these diagrams. The left-hand side, the green side, shows affinity kinship. That is the relationship by marriage. The right-hand side, the blue side, shows consanguinity kinship. That is relationship by blood. I think it is easier to look at the consanguinity, the relationship by blood side, and then look at the corresponding relationship on the affinity or the left side. So, relationship to the secretary, not within the third degree, that would include everyone listed on this slide. So that's everyone from your father, your mother, all the way to your niece, your nephew, your grandson, your granddaughter, or to your spouse's grandchild or child or father-in-law, mother-in-law. It includes everyone that's listed on this page. Relationship to a candidate not within the second degree, this would include everyone except those in the outer ring. If you have questions, please contact your county election board about this. Did you know if you decide to run for an office and become a candidate, you must resign from being a precinct official within 10 days following the close of the filing period? If you are employed by or related to a candidate, you must notify the Secretary of the County Election Board within 10 days of following the close of the filing period. Did you know there is no dual office holding? Some examples might be a precinct official, that's an inspector, judge, clerk, or provisional voting officer, cannot also be a county election board member, or a municipal officer, or a school board member. There are a few exceptions.
Hi, this is Paul Zierix, the Secretary of the State Election Board, and you're about to learn about security and integrity in elections here in the state of Oklahoma. As election officials, nobody cares more about the integrity and security of elections than we do. That's why it's important that you learn all of the security protocols and follow the rules and procedures that are in place to help protect the integrity of our elections. Thank you again for serving. And let's make sure we have free, fair, secure, and accurate elections in the state of Oklahoma.
We are working hard to make sure that Oklahoma has the most secure election system in the country. So let's talk about the precinct official's role in the chain of custody. Chain of custody, in regards to precinct officials, means the unbroken control that ensures the physical security of the ballots and the e-scan. While in the inspector's possession, the e-scan and ballots should always be secured. Never leave the e-scan or ballots at the polling place if setting up the day before. Never leave the e-scan or ballots in an unlocked vehicle. Never leave the e-scan in a vehicle during extreme temperatures. While at the polling place, the e-scan and ballot security must also be maintained. Never leave an e-scan unsecured or out of the presence of precinct officials. The precinct officials should always be aware of any activity around the e-scan. The ballots should never be left unattended or in an open area that anyone other than the precinct officials may have access. When returning to the County Election Board on election night, the inspector must bring the e-scan, ballots, and all election supplies back to the County Election Board. The inspector must be able to attest to the security of the e-scan and ballots. While at the polling place, e-scan and ballot security must also be maintained. Never leave an e-scan unsecured or out of the presence of precinct officials. The precinct officials should always be aware of any activity around the e-scan. No one touches or works on or opens the e-scan without prior authorization from the County Election Board. The ballots should never be left unattended or in an area that anyone other than the precinct officials may have access. When returning to the County Election Board on election night, the inspector must bring the e-scan, ballots, and all election supplies back to the County Election Board. Remember, the inspector must be able to attest to the security of the e-scan and ballots. If you see something, say something. Always be aware of your surroundings. Report any suspicious items left behind, something like a briefcase, a backpack, or a cell phone. Call the County Election Board and/or the appropriate authority. Never leave the e-scan in a vehicle. Do not subject the e-scan to extreme temperatures. Remember, never leave the e-scan in an unsecured area. Do not leave the e-scan in a vehicle. It is not a secure area. In one of the state's elections, a precinct official had her car stolen during the night before the election. As you can imagine, this caused a lot of grief on election day. Extreme temperatures can also damage the e-scan. Always transport the e-scan in a safe and secure manner. Never in the back of an open vehicle, never exposed to the elements, and never stack anything on top of it. Never use an e-scan for any purpose other than for voters scanning ballots. Do not use the e-scan as a table. and never use the eScan as a wheel block. A recent law allows ballot selfies. Ballot selfies are permissible. However, it is not permissible to disclose the vote within the election enclosure or to post on social media while in the election enclosure. So what is the election enclosure? It is the area that encompasses the location where the precinct officials sit, the eScan is stationed, and the voting booths are set up on election day. Redistricting occurs every 10 years following the U.S. Census. Precinct lines may be redrawn. The census took place in 2020, and redistricting occurred at the end of 2021. The first election where the redistricting will take effect is the June 2022 primary election. Some voters may have always voted at this particular location, and they might not have moved, but their polling location may have changed. If the voter is not listed in your precinct registry, they should check the Oklahoma voter portal or call the county election board to find their correct polling location. Our training is divided into 4 sections: the election day reference and problem solver, forms, processing independent voters in primary elections, and provisional voting. We have assembled a useful curriculum that will help you be well prepared and keep you engaged. The publication in the Precinct Official Notebook is called the Election Day Reference and Problem Solver. This publication was revised and reprinted in 2022. Our theme this year is Pieces of the Pie or Slices of the Pie. The Election Day Reference and Problem Solver is one of the pieces of the pie. If you would like to download an electronic copy, use this link. The link is case sensitive. There is also a QR code that you may use to access the Election Day Reference and Problem Solver. If you have questions on how to use the QR code, please ask your county election board staff, and they should be able to provide you with this QR code and this website address. The Precinct Official Notebook contains the Election Day Reference and Problem Solver. All precincts will share the notebook, just as we have done in the past. Remember, you are all pieces of the pie. You're all important pieces of the pie. For each of the major categories, there will be a corresponding tab. The Quick Reference FAQs tab, General Information, Preparing the Polling Place and Opening the Polls, the Judge, the Clerk, the Inspector or Provisional Voting Officer, After the Polls Close, the Provisional Voting Appendix, the Electronic Poll Book Appendix, the eScan Troubleshooting Appendix, the Glossary Index, and Emergency Procedures. As we go through the training today, we will highlight features of the Election Day Reference and Problem Solver and point out some of the critical information. The Problem Solver Quick Reference is designed to help you quickly find solutions to some of the more common Election Day problems that you may encounter. A few of the FAQs are voter frequently asked questions, but most of the questions are precinct official FAQs. The last page of the FAQs is precinct official hints and tips. These hints and tips are critical reminders for end-of-the-night procedures. We'll now look at the General Information tab. One of the first things you will notice are some symbols or icons. J means Judge, C means Clerk, I means Inspector, PVO means Provisional Voting Officer, and later you will see that a check mark indicates eScan steps. These symbols or icons are used throughout the manual to show the precinct official who has responsibility for the action and/or the precinct official that has an additional role. Anytime you see a symbol on a page, it indicates the official that is involved in the procedure being described. You are all pieces of pie and work together as a team. Some important information in this section is included under the heading Violations of the Law on pages 8 and 9. Remember that electioneering is prohibited within 300 feet of a ballot box. 300 feet is the length of a football field. This means that voters may not talk about candidates or issues on the ballot. The circle represents a 300-foot radius from the location of a ballot box. Precinct officials may not talk about or share opinions about anything related to the election. If someone asks you about a candidate or question, you must tell the voter it is against the law to talk about that topic inside the polling place. Precinct officials need to be careful to not indicate by expression or tone of voice any opinion regarding any political party or issue on the ballot. Follow the steps on pages 8 and 9 and call the County Election Board for assistance if needed. If you see something that doesn't seem right to you, maybe you disagree with a procedure that is being followed, maybe you remember it differently than another precinct official, maybe someone is hanging around longer than they should, maybe the person is carrying something that looks suspicious, talk with the other precinct officials about the situation if needed. Look in the Election Day Reference and Problem Solver. Call the County Election Board for guidance if needed. A person whose name is in the precinct registry is a registered voter in that precinct and may vote. A person whose name is not in the precinct registry, but who claims to reside within the precinct and who claims to be registered and eligible to vote in the election may vote a provisional ballot. The next tab is labeled Preparing Polling Place and Opening Polls. This section starts on page 13. Pages with a check mark at the top indicate steps that relate to the e-scan or ballot box. Precinct officials must arrive at the polling place by 6 a.m. The inspector, judge, and clerk meet at the polling place at 6 a.m. on the day of a regular or special statewide election, and not later than 6:30 a.m. on any other election day at the discretion of the Secretary of the County Election Board. You will be given an opening the polls checklist and an opening the polls e-scan checklist for every election. It is highly recommended that the inspector begin the process for opening the polls on the e-scan while the judge and clerk begin with the other checklist. Be sure to follow the steps on the checklists. Post signs in locations that can be read by voters waiting in line to vote. Use your opening the polls checklist. The diagram on page 14 shows an example of how a polling place might be arranged. The materials placed at each precinct official's position are shown in the diagram. This general area where your voting booths, the e-scan, and precinct officials are located is considered the election enclosure. For more information about the parts of the e-scan voting device, see pages 16 and 17. A cover has been added to the back of the machine to protect the buttons on the back of the e-scan. The cover is not shown in the illustration in this manual. Detailed e-scan and ballot box steps are shown on pages 18 through 23. All pages throughout this manual with a check mark at the top of the page indicate steps related to the e-scan voting device or ballot box.
Kelly Stambaugh. Oklahoma State Election Board. In this training video, we're going to show you the first task in opening the precinct for voters. That's extending the ballot box and placing the e-scan on top of it. First thing you want to do is make sure you're near an electrical outlet. Then you want to extend the ballot box to put it in the position for the e-scan to be placed on it. I'm going to have Willie come in and help me. First thing we're going to do is put our foot on the wheel in the back, and we're both going to take both hands, press in the red button, and then team lift upward. You heard all four corners lock. It's ready to go. Kelly Stambaugh, Oklahoma State Election Board. In this training video, we're going to affix the e-scan to the top of the already extended ballot box. You're going to start with the round key, and you're going to insert it into the emergency ballot door lock, turn it to the 12 o'clock position, fully open the ballot door, and then reach inside and pull down on the knob. And for visual clarity, here's the lid off of another ballot box. What we want to do is line this pin with this arrow, which means we need to move this assembly back. What this looks like from the bottom is this is the knob that we're speaking about. You'll pull down on the knob, move it, and then release. Now we're in the correct relationship. Arrow and pin are lined up toward the back of the slot. It's ready to accept the e-scan. And what we're going to do is we're going to actually do that to this ballot box now. You'll notice the pin is toward the front of the slot. It's not lined up with the arrow. We're going to reach in, pull straight down, push back, and release. Now it's ready to accept the e-scan. To show you what lines up on the e-scan, these holes here are where the posts engage and then slide and lock. You'll also notice the ballot exit opening and the 4 feet that are designed to lock into the small holes in each corner to where the top of the ballot box cradles the e-scan and everything is lined up so that the ballots will flow freely. Now we're going to take and place the e-scan on the top of the ballot box and wiggle it. Then we're going to reach into the emergency ballot door, pull the knob down, and move it to the opposite direction. I'll show you what that looks like. We're going to pull it towards ourselves, like that, to where now that post is locked and has the e-scan physically locked to the top of the ballot box. Once the ballot box is locked in place, then you'll take and close the emergency ballot door. Make sure that it's fully closed before you turn the key to the 3 o'clock position. This keeps that ballot door from causing a problem when the ballot box is collapsed at the end of the night, and then when next time you try to extend it, this door gets caught on this lip. That's how to correctly install the e-scan and lock it to the ballot box.
When opening the polls, please use the Opening the Polls checklist and Opening the Polls e-scan checklist for each election. It is recommended that the inspector begin the process for opening the polls on the e-scan while the judge and clerk begin with the Opening the Polls checklist. It is imperative that the inspector start this process as soon as possible after arriving, so that if there are any issues while getting the e-scan ready, there will be time to correct them before voters arrive at 7.
In this training video, we're going to open the polls on the e-scan. And where we're going to start is we're going to remind you that all of this has to take place before 7 a.m.
Instructions for preparing and opening the polls on the eScan are found on pages 21 through 23 of the Election Day Reference and Problem Solver.
Now, the first thing we're going to do is we're going to take the inspector's notes to secretary, and we're going to compare that serial number to the serial number on the blue tab. We're going to break the seal, and we're going to get the keys out of my pocket from the voting device key envelope. We're going to take the square key. We're going to go in at 12 o'clock and go to 3 o'clock on each one to unlock the latches on the eScan. Then when we open the lid, we're going to pay particular attention to the latch arm to make sure it's secured, to keep the lid from collapsing. Then we're going to take the keys and put them right back in the voting device key envelope and put it in a secure place. My secure place is in my pocket. Next thing we're going to do is grab our opening the polls eScan checklist, and we're going to then compare the Hart serial number tag with the inspector's notes, the state serial number with the inspector's notes, and the security seal. If any of these tags don't match, immediately call the county election board. Apply brakes here. Don't go any further. Since these all match muster and the numbers match, we're going to then open up the charger bay and remove the eScan power supply. Now the eScan power supply is in two pieces. You'll plug the charger into the cable. Make sure it's firmly attached. Then we're going to make our way around to the back of the eScan, and we're going to ensure that the eScan is off. You'll notice the rocker switch is toward the left, the 0. Then we're going to plug the power cord into an outlet. And we're going to take the other end of the power cable, the round plug, and place it into the charging port. Now you'll notice when we plugged it in, we have both a solid green LED and a flashing amber. That's perfect. If the LEDs don't match, if there's not one or the other, stop immediately and call the county election board. We have a problem with the eScan. Since this eScan's charging looks fine, we're going to go ahead and power it up. We're going to turn the rocker switch to the number 1, which means on. Then we're going to move back around to the front, and we're going to close the power supply door. And we're going to wait for the eScan to finish booting. A watched eScan never boots.
Be patient as the eScan boots up. Under normal conditions, this process may take up to 3 minutes.
Now that the eScan has finished booting, we have the power up plus the information from the election identification. And on the eScan configuration, we can see that we can print the 0 tape now. Let's go ahead and do that. We're ready to open the polls, and we are going to go ahead and do that. I'm going to press open the polls, and I'm going to provide the poll worker password so that we can go ahead and open the polls up.
Please see page 23 of the Election Day Reference and Problem Solver to find instructions for entering the 6-digit poll worker password.
Now, once the polls have been opened with the poll worker password, I'm going to roll the tape up. I'm going to leave it attached. to the E-scan. As we'd mentioned before, it stays attached all day. I'm going to use this clip to affix it so that it can be nice and tidy. You'll notice on the E-scan the paper ballot number is indeed 0. The audio ballot number is indeed 0. Ready to scan and insert ballot are in the display area, and there's no ATI insignia in the top center. We're ready to go. The polls are open on the E-scan. All of this took place before 7 a.m.
The inspector, judge, and clerk should each visually verify the tape printed from the E-scan to ensure the election date, precinct number, and races for the election are correct, and that the 0 tape in fact reads all zeros. The tape should then be rolled up and left attached to the E-scan until the inspector is instructed to remove it at the end of the day in the Close the Polls checklist.
If you've had any problems, immediately call your county election board. No voting should happen before 7 a.m.
In this video, we see an example of an E-scan charging. The solid green light indicates the E-scan has power and is working. The blinking amber light shows that the battery is charging. In this video, we have an example of a fully charged E-scan. The solid green light indicates the E-scan has power and is working. Once the amber light stops blinking and stays on solid, the E-scan is charged. Here we have an example of a failed brick battery or other components in the E-scan. The green light is on solid, indicating the E-scan is getting power, but the amber light remains dark. A dark amber light indicates the battery has failed or won't charge because of other system failures. Here we have an example of an E-scan without a green light. This indicates the E-scan is not getting power or has experienced a system failure. Check and make sure all connections are securely plugged in and seated. If the light on the power adapter remains dark, this could indicate a bad wall outlet or faulty power adapter. In this situation, we recommend replacing the power adapter with one known to be working. If the light remains dark, try a different wall outlet. If this does not correct the problem, then the E-scan will need to be sent to the State Election Board for repairs.
The Judges section begins on page 25. At the top of page 25, there is a large J followed by the word Judge. At the top of every page in this section, the J symbol is displayed. This indicates that the primary precinct official for these procedures is the judge. State law requires that every voter must produce one acceptable form of ID before voting. The name must substantially conform. However, the law does not allow you to check the voter's address as a condition for voting. Substantially conform means match. For example, the name on the driver license is Susan Ellen Smith, but the name in the precinct registry is Missy Jones. The names do not match. It may be well known that Susan Ellen has always gone by the nickname Missy and that she is married to John Jones. However, because the name on her proof of identity does not substantially match the name in the precinct registry, Susan Ellen, Missy, must vote by provisional ballot. In another example, James Edward Doe is the name on the state identification card, but the name in the precinct registry is Jim Ed Doe. While the name on his proof of identity and the name in the precinct registry are not identical, they do match substantially. Jim Ed does not need to vote a provisional ballot. Now we're going to apply this information. There is a publication titled 2022 Election Official Review Questions that was written to accompany this video. Most of the questions in this video also appear in the review questions. So applying the information. The name in the precinct registry is Pete R. Pan. The name on the voter's Oklahoma driver license is Peter Ronald Pan. Does this name substantially conform? Yes. Pete is a common abbreviation of the name Peter. Your niece recently married. Her name in the precinct registry is Gwen Morales. She changed her name on her Oklahoma driver license to Gwen M. Parker. Does this name substantially conform? No. Even though you have personal knowledge of what the new last name is, you have not seen an acceptable document that conforms with the name in the precinct registry. You should offer the voter a provisional ballot. You should also offer the voter a voter registration application form to change her name. What if the name on the Oklahoma driver license is Gwen M. Morales Parker? Does this name substantially conform? Yes, I would accept this one. If you have questions, talk to your county election board. A list of the acceptable proof of identity documents is on page 26. Remember, there are 3 ways that the proof of identity requirement may be met: a photo ID issued by the state of Oklahoma, the U.S. federal government, or a tribal government, a voter ID card or a temporary ID that's issued by the county election board, or a provisional ballot affidavit. The voter must provide an actual ID. A photo of an ID on a cell phone is not an acceptable ID. An acceptable electronic driver license or ID is not a photo of a regular driver's license. But it is the Oklahoma Mobile ID. The photo moves, the head moves left and right. It will also show the backside of the driver license with a barcode. There is also a certify button. On the Oklahoma Mobile ID, the photo moves, the head moves left and right. It will also show the backside of the driver license ID with a barcode. If the phone is turned horizontally, the voter may swipe to see the back of the ID. Precinct officials should not touch the voter's smartphone. Have the voter tap the certify box. The seal that is shown is similar to the actual certification seal.
Oklahoma residents can now download a digital driver's license that can be used in some circumstances in place of their physical card. Oklahoma Mobile ID is available for both Android and iPhones. The app will display a replica of the voter's identification card or driver's license on their smartphone. The information comes directly from the Oklahoma Department of Public Safety. The ID or driver's license photo moves from side to side when displayed in either portrait or landscape view. Our first example is the portrait view, which shows both the front and back of the mobile ID on the screen. The voter must press the Certify button to display the certification seal. When the voter rotates their smartphone to landscape view, the front of the ID is displayed. The voter can swipe left to reveal the back of the ID. As with the portrait view, the landscape view has a Certify button that the voter must push to reveal the Certify seal. Oklahoma Mobile ID is an accepted form of identification for voting in the state of Oklahoma. Remember, just a photo of any acceptable ID displayed on a smartphone is not a valid form of ID. Please watch for the photo which moves from side to side and the certify seal to know it is an authentic Oklahoma mobile ID. Also, please be sure the voter maintains physical control of their device at all times. Election officials should not hold, operate, or even touch the voter's smartphone.
When considering if an ID is acceptable, ask yourself 3 questions. Who issued it? The ID must be issued by the state of Oklahoma, the U.S. federal government, a tribal government, or the county election board. Does it have a photograph? If it's issued by the county election board, a photo is not required. An ID issued by any other entity must have a photo. And third, does it have an expiration date? An expiration date is not required, but if there is an expiration date, it must be later than the date of the election. If there's no expiration date, assume the ID is valid indefinitely. A sample precinct registry is shown on page 28. The sample gives a detailed explanation of the different parts of the registry. The judge must be familiar with the information provided on the precinct registry. It is critical to use this information to determine which ballots a voter is eligible to receive. There is no excuse or reason for giving a voter a wrong ballot. Let's take a closer look. The first column lists the voter's name. A political affiliation is listed in the registry only if this is a primary or runoff primary election. If absentee ballot requested is shown in the signature column, refer to page 29. The voter signs over the message after signing the pink affidavit. Look for messages in the signature column. If there are messages in the signature column, refer to the instructions on pages 29 and 30. The voter ID number is requested on some forms. The judge accurately prints the ballot code or codes for ballots issued to each voter in the ballot issued column. These 3 columns are for the school and municipal districts. Voters are eligible for the districts listed in the precinct registry. When you have more than one district in the precinct, you must carefully check the registry to see which ballot or ballots the voter is eligible to receive. If the voter insists on a different district, issue a provisional ballot. Remember, the precinct registry is a critical piece of election day documentation. Use it to determine the ballots a voter is eligible to receive and carefully record the ballots issued to each voter. If a voter brings their absentee ballot to the polling place, tear or cut the ballot in half. Place it in the spoiled and discarded ballots bag at the clerk's position. Print the voter's name on the absentee voter affidavit. Ask the voter to read the oath on the affidavit and sign the affidavit. Then ask the voter to sign over the message in the precinct registry. Then you can proceed with the usual process. Instructions are on page 29 and also in the Forms section under Absentee Voter Affidavit. We have a new procedure for Confirm Address. If the precinct registry says Confirm Address, ask the voter if the address listed in the precinct registry is the current address where the voter resides. If the voter says yes, print the voter's name, address, and voter ID number as listed in the precinct registry on the Confirm Address affidavit. You can find the affidavit in the Forms section of the precinct official notebook. Ask the voter to read the oath and sign the affidavit. Ask the voter to sign the precinct registry in the signature space across the message. But if the voter says no, the voter does not reside at the address listed in the precinct registry, Send the voter to the inspector to complete an Oklahoma voter registration application form. After the voter completes an Oklahoma voter registration application form, the voter returns to the judge. If there is a line, the inspector may want to insert this person as the next person in line to see the judge. The voter may sign the precinct registry across the message and receive the ballot from the clerk. Return to the normal routine. The judge's instructions are on page 30. The inspector's instructions are on page 42, and the Confirm Address tab in the Forms section. The judge identifies voters who should be offered a provisional ballot. The judge completes the provisional ballot voucher. Instructions for the judge are on pages 33 through 34. They're also in the provisional voting appendix. If you offer the voter a provisional ballot and the voter refuses, remember to fill out the TAN provisional ballot refusal form. The next tab is for the clerk. Look at the information about ballot distribution on page 37. The judge tells the clerk which ballots to issue to the voter. Clear communication is critical. The clerk is responsible for ensuring a voter gets the correct ballots. Carefully tear only one ballot from the pad. Do not tear ballots from the pad in anticipation of voters. There's no excuse or reason for giving a voter a wrong ballot. The ballot accounting form is no longer required. It's going to be taken care of in a different way. Instructions for the gold spoiled ballot affidavit are on page 38. Instructions are also in the Forms section behind the yellow tab labeled Spoiled Ballot Affidavit. The spoiled ballot affidavit will be placed in the large pocket on the spoiled and discarded ballots bag. The spoiled ballot is torn in pieces and placed in the spoiled and discarded ballots bag. New this year is the yellow spoiled and discarded ballots bag. Items that will be placed in the spoiled and discarded ballots bag are spoiled ballots torn in pieces, discarded ballots folded in half, absentee ballots brought to the polling place torn or cut in half. After the polls are closed, seal the spoiled and discarded ballots bag with a seal provided by the County Election Board. The next section is for the inspector. The tab for this section says Inspector/Provisional Voting Officer. In most precincts, the inspector will also serve as the provisional voting officer. Information for inspectors begins starting on page 41. We have a new procedure for discarded ballots. Discarded ballots are ballots that have been left in the election enclosure or trash by a voter. Show the ballots to the judge and clerk. Fold the ballot in half. Give it to the clerk to place in the spoiled and discarded ballots bag. The abandoned ballot, same procedure. It's new terminology that we began in 2020. An abandoned ballot is a ballot that the eScan rejects and returns after the voter leaves the election enclosure. They're out of sight. If this occurs, just press the Cast Ballot button. Several pages of this section are devoted to voter assistance. Assistance is available both inside and outside the polling place. The voter assistance form is on page 44. Instructions for the voter assistance form and the oaths are on pages 43 through 47. Instructions are also included in the Forms section behind the Voter Assistance tab. We'll look at that section a little later. The oaths have been put back on the form for the voter and voter's assistant. And for those of you that have been in the system when the oaths were there before, I'm sure you're thrilled that they're back on the form. The ATI is available to any voter who wishes to use it. Please offer the ATI to any voter who would appear to benefit from its use. Make sure ATI voters who are not provisional voters sign the precinct registry. If you have an ATI voter, follow the instructions on pages 53 through 60 to set up the ATI session. Fill out the ATI session log. You will find the blue ATI session log in the Forms section behind the Voter Assistance tab.
Kelly Stamoff, Oklahoma State Election Board. In this training video, we're going to show you how to accommodate an ATI audio tactile interface voter. We've identified our ATI voter. They've been seated in the ATI device area here at the table. The instructions for how to do this are in your Election Day Reference and Problem Solver, which we have with us.
Please see pages 53 through 60 in the Election Day Reference and Problem Solver for information about assisting ATI voters.
The first thing we're going to do, now that our voter is seated, is we're going to orient them to the ATI device. The ATI device can be up to 15 feet away from the eScan. We're going to place it in front of the voter. And we're going to plug the headphones in. We're going to put that fully into the jack that is on the same side of the ATI device as the red cast ballot button. Now once we have our voter oriented toward the ATI device with the select knob on the right, the enter on the right side of the center, help and previous and next to the left side of the center, and cast ballot to the far left, we'll take care of the paperwork. We're going to go to the ATI session log and write down the type of ballot that they're going to require. In this case, the code is GEN. It's a general election. Then we're going to get the ballot from the clerk, and we're going to write ATI at the top of the ballot, so this ballot can be found in the bin at the end of the night in case an election night recount needs to be done, so that they can identify that this ballot was voted via ATI. And we're going to also write the time down that the ATI session started. We're going to check our watch and write the time down. And we're going to take the ATI ballot over to the eScan, and we're going to press the red poll worker button one time. Now on the eScan, we're going to select Activate ATI, and we're instructed to insert a blank ballot to continue. We're going to go ahead and feed the ballot. Now at this point, we're asked to accept that ballot to be voted via ATI. We're going to accept. And now we're asked if this is a normal or provisional voting session. We're going to select normal in this case. And now the voter has been seated and oriented to the device, and they have their headphones on. And ballot has been fed, and start session is what we will want to do next. We want to make sure that the voter is comfortable, seated, and ready to go, because as soon as we press start session, the audio will begin speaking to them and giving them instructions on how to vote. As soon as the ATI session is active, at the top center of the eScan display, you'll see the wheelchair icon in blue. That will let you know that the ATI session is ready to go and active. Regular voters can still process ballots through the eScan while the ATI session is active.
You are currently on the following ballot. Precinct 140002 REG. Official ballot. General election. Douglas County, Oklahoma. November 4th, 2020. To vote for your choice in each contest, turn the wheel on the right until you hear your choice, and then mark your choice by state favorites. Turn the select wheel to continue. Contest 1 of 6. There are 6 choices for the contest called Favorite Sport. Vote for 1. Select 1. Baseball. Basketball. Football. Basketball. You have selected basketball for contest. Favorite sport. Contest 2 of 6. There are 5 choices for the contest called Favorite Fair Food. Vote for 1. Select 1. Cinnamon roll. Funnel cake. Indian taco. Funnel cake. Cinnamon roll. You have selected cinnamon roll for contest. Favorite fair food. Contest 3 of 6. There are 6 choices for the contest called Favorite Oklahoma Destination. Vote for 1. Select Bricktown. Little Sahara. Wichita Mountains. Turner Falls. Ballot summary page. To hear your selection for each contest, turn the select wheel clockwise to advance one contest at a time. Favorite sport. Basketball. Favorite fair food. Cinnamon roll. Favorite Oklahoma destination. No selections. Favorite state emblem. No selections. Please wait. Your vote has been recorded. Thank you for voting. You may now leave the booth.
And that's how you allow an ATI voter to use the audio tactile interface.
If you have problems with the audio settings for the ATI, there is an additional information on page 92 in the eScan Troubleshooting Appendix. We'll talk about this appendix later. Instructions for the provisional voting officer start on page 61. In most cases, the inspector will serve as the provisional voting officer. We'll take a look at provisional voting procedures more closely a little later. Our next tab is after the polls close. Follow the steps in this section and on your checklists. Closing the polls on the eScan, disconnecting the eScan, collapsing the ballot box, final reports and duties. Be sure to pack the election supplies as directed. Page 75 has a list of items the inspector must return to the County Election Board. And most importantly, don't forget to take the eScan and all election materials back to the County Election Board office. Very important. You don't want to have to go back to the polling place and retrieve those if you've forgotten them. All precinct officials must sign the election expense claim before receiving compensation. Paychecks can be picked up in the County Election Board on the date designated by the County Election Board, or it will be mailed on Monday following the election. This is a new policy that the State Election Board has put in place. There is also, by the USPS, there's a thing called Informed Delivery. That's a free service from the United States Postal Service. And sign up for that, it is informeddelivery.usps.com. It will give you a photo of the items that you're expected to receive in the mail that day. precisely 7 p.m., the inspector announces that the polls are closed. All voters in line at that time may vote. Do not close the polls before 7 p.m. Never remove ballots from the ballot box before 7 p.m. or before all voters have inserted their ballots into the e-scan. Check voting booths to make sure no voters remain. Unlock and open the emergency ballot box using the round key. Remove and scan any ballots in the emergency ballot box. Select Cast Ballot to accept a blank or overvoted ballot. Close the emergency ballot box. Close polls on eScan and obtain tally report. Refer to pages 67 through 75 in the Election Day Reference and Problem Solver for detailed instructions. While Ready to Scan is displayed, press the red poll worker button one time. Select Close Polls. Are you sure you want to close the polls? Once the polls are closed, they cannot be reopened. This operation is final. So the answer is yes, we want to close the polls. Enter the Close Polls password using the up and right arrow buttons. Select Accept. A closed polls report prints. This is not the totals report. Print and distribute tally and detail reports. Select Print Reports. The tally and detail reports print. The judge, clerk, and inspector sign the report. Place the original tally and detail report, which includes the zero printout in the first signed tally and detail report, into the envelope for tally report. Print the number of additional tally and detail reports as needed for your county. You'll do that by selecting Print Reports for each report. Tear off the report as it completes printing. The inspector, judge, and clerk sign all copies of the tally and detail reports and distribute. One goes on the polling place door, one in the ballot transfer case, and others as directed by the County Election Board. Secure the eScan voting device and ballot box. Press the power switch on the back of the eScan to off or zero. Unplug the round AC power cable from the back of the eScan. Return accessories to the eScan case, the power cables, headphones, and ATI. Pull the safety hinge toward the front. Close and lock the eScan case with a square key. Be careful to see that both the top and bottom portions of the latches are closed and secure. Think of a tackle box, toolbox, or suitcase from the 40s or 50s. Detach the eScan from the ballot box. Unlock and open the emergency ballot box door with a round key. Pull the knob down and slide it toward the back of the ballot box. Two people should lift the eScan off the ballot box. Unlock the two locks on the main ballot box door at the bottom of the ballot box with a round key. Lift and secure the door with a hidden bungee cord. Remove all ballots and place into a transfer case. Using the flashlight provided by the County Election Board, thoroughly inspect the ballot box to make sure all ballots have been removed. Shine the flashlight into the emergency ballot box. Also shine the flashlight into the main ballot box through the main door and the rear door and through the slot in the top of the ballot box. Close and lock the rear ballot box door, main ballot box door, and the emergency ballot box door. Place keys in the voting device key envelope. Seal the envelope and place the keys in the envelope for tally report. Collapse and/or store the ballot box as directed by the County Election Board. Complete and sign Election Day forms. The inspector, judge, and clerk sign the long white State Election Board seals. Indicate on the seal if the ballots are voted, unvoted, or a combination of voted and unvoted. Close the transfer case. Place the signatures on the seal over the opening of the transfer case. Reinforce the seal with clear package tape if available. Place the following items in the envelope for tally report. Tally and detail report from the eScan voting device that includes the zero printout, the first tally and detail report, and signatures of the inspector, judge, and clerk. Voting device key envelope with keys. ATI session log. Pack all supplies as instructed by the County Election Board. Seal envelope for tally report. Inspector, judge, and clerk sign the envelope flap. The inspector issues vouchers. The judge, clerk, and provisional voting officer, if applicable, sign the Election Day expense claim. The inspector returns the eScan, ballots, precinct registry, and all paperwork to the County Election Board. And with that, we've closed the polls, and the inspector is ready to return all of the supplies, especially the eScan and the remaining ballots, all the ballots, both voted and unvoted ballots. All of the supplies go back to the County Election Board as soon as you can so that the election night can be finished. Electronic poll books are coming soon. When they are available in your polling place, there will be additional training. When it's implemented, electronic poll books in Oklahoma will not have the capability of connecting to the internet. Our next tab is the Provisional Voting Appendix. Election officials ask for a single document that describes the entire provisional voting process from start to finish. That's the purpose of the Provisional Voting Appendix. It begins on page 79. This includes the same information that's included in the judges section and the information that's included in the inspector section. We'll talk about provisional voting later in the second video. The next section is an appendix designed to help with troubleshooting eScan issues. If there are problems with the eScan, the inspector should refer to the eScan Troubleshooting Appendix. Troubleshooting ballot-related issues are on page 93. If you see an error code on the eScan console, this page in the appendix is where you go to find possible responses to the error. The error code is listed at the lower right-hand corner of the console. Start here. But if you cannot resolve the problem, call the County Election Board for assistance. If the eScan displays an error code, do not spoil the ballot unless you are specifically directed to do so by the instructions on this page or by the County Election Board.
Kelly Stambaugh, Oklahoma State Election Board. In this training video, we're going to show you how to deal with ballot processing errors. The polls are open, the eScan is fired up, and voters are feeding ballots. And you have a voter come up to you and say, I can't get my ballot to feed correctly. We're going to induce a couple of problems and show you how to handle them. In this instance, the e-scan shows a paper jam. The ballot has not been counted. What I did was I was too gentle with it. There was a slight hesitation, and the ballot will come right back out. To solve this problem, you simply pull the ballot right back out. It's not been counted. And then when you present it and put a little bit of tension on it. And it'll feed every time. In this demonstration, we'll show you what an overvote looks like. Now on the evergreen ballot, on state favorites, favorite sport, vote for 1. We've intentionally marked 2. And we're going to feed that ballot. The e-scan caught that contest is overvoted, and it shows you on the display. To make changes, you can either pull the ballot and talk to the judge inspector here at the polling site and ask them about if you want to change your vote somehow. Or if you're okay with the overvote, you can just press cast ballot. That's what we're going to do. Now we'll demonstrate a blank ballot, a ballot that has no votes on it. This is the evergreen ballot. We use it in testing. It's marked as blank. It has no selections. On the display, it states ballot has no selections. The ballot is blank. If we would like to cast our ballot, we can go ahead and cast the ballot, or we can pull the ballot back out. It's our choice. We're going to cast our ballot.
We hope the glossary and index will be useful tools to help you find information and answers quickly. You can find definitions to words, phrases, and terms in the glossary. The index will help you to find the pages where certain words, phrases, and terms are found in this publication. The tab for emergency procedures is colored red to make it easy to find. Although we hope an emergency situation never occurs, it's important to know what to do in the event there is a true emergency. Stay calm, assess the situation, use good judgment, take necessary actions to ensure the safety of precinct officials, your voters, and others. Call 911 if you have a medical emergency, fire, or situation that would warrant the action. If there is ever an emergency, contact the County Election Board as soon as possible to apprise them of the situation. There are some additional pages in this section that give instructions in some special situations. This is the last section of the Election Day Reference and Problem Solver. Sometimes there are occasions when it would be good to employ some conflict resolution tools at the polling place. Stay calm and courteous. Listen. Apologize. I'm sorry, I cannot find your name in the precinct registry. Check all sections of the registry if it is a partisan election. I'm sorry, this isn't the correct polling place. Can we call the County Election Board to help find your correct polling place? Show empathy. Maintain a calm tone of voice. Use the voter's name if you can. Don't take it personally. Be patient. Understand body language. Avoid negative language. Avoid words and phrases such as, let me be clear, for your information, and actually. Resolve the issue. If they are in the wrong polling location, refer them to the Oklahoma Voter Portal, call the County Election Board, offer a provisional ballot. This is the end of the Part 1 video. Feel free to take a break before you begin the Part 2 video.